Morning, everybody. David Shapiro here with your daily videos. Oh, let me cancel out of Flux so that the screen doesn't look too orange. Okay, so AutoMuse. If you saw the live stream last night, which you might not, depending on when you're watching this video, I explained why I'm open sourcing AutoMuse, and I'm going to keep it all open source from here on. The short version is two things happened. One is I had a conversation with some of the folks at Tau, and I realized, no, I got to focus on the things that are really important, which is making sure that AGI happens correctly. And of course, I'm not going to do that myself. There are plenty of people working on it around the world, but I can focus on doing my part rather than focusing on writing novels. Well, I'll still write my own novel, but I don't need to keep this code secret. More important things to focus on code-wise. The second thing that happened was I got feedback from my editor for my novel. And I realized that that no matter how good someone is as a writer, and by no means am I an expert. I've been studying the craft for almost 4 years. And it takes, a lifetime to master an art. But even so, despite all the effort, the crazy amount of effort, I've read so many books and gone to so many workshops. I send my novel to an editor. I send my novel to an editor, and there's just so much more expertise that goes into editing a novel than goes into writing a novel. It's a different kind of expertise. And so what I realized is that the relationship between an author and an editor is actually a lot like a generative adversarial network, where on the one hand, I am the generator, I'm generating a work, and then the editor is the discriminator. And so I realized that while we can definitely do some generative adversarial networks with GPT-3 on small scale things, it is not going to be possible with the current token limits. We can do a GAN for short stories and flash fiction, and even trying to do it in sections is not going to be possible. So even if I had a few years to work on fine tuning and summarization and stuff, it's not going to happen. So I'm not worried about disrupting an industry. The technology isn't there yet, but there are a few things that we can do. So as part of the AutoMuse project, I'll start with the Synopsis generator. And the Synopsis generator does exactly what it says on the tin. It generates synopsis. And so I've generated 200 some odd synopses. And let me, here, they don't look good on GitHub, so let me show you what they look like here. So I've generated a whole bunch. I've deleted the ones that were too big and too small, and I kind of wish that I hadn't, because you can keep those bad data points and measure them. But so here's an example. In the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire is at its height of power, but in the far-flung outpost of Britannia, things are far from stable. So this is hey, this is cool. Young centurion named Marcus Flavius Aquila arrives in Britannia with a mission. So this is a really great story starting off. Marcus' search for the eagle takes him all over Britannia. This is a story that I would read. This would be a great movie. My coffee's over here. Why did I put it over there? So we have a full story end to end. So how did I do this? Let me explain it to you. Oh, and also, sorry. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay. So we will go over the synopsis generator. So we will do generate synopsis. So here's the code. It's pretty straightforward. So I do seed just to get a little bit of entropy. And then for I in list of range 0 to 200, you can just comment this out if you want to just generate one. But I was generating bulk data for fine tuning. And you probably actually don't want to do this, because I realized that fine tuning is still as expensive as it was before, and so it is inordinately expensive to do fine tuning compared to just generating data and then discriminating against the data. So I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But also I realized that I need to clean up my find and replace a little bit. So let's see, do replace, and then we'll just get rid of semicolons. Because what I did was, I'll show you why these are here in just a second, because of the prompt. Beginning, middle, and then we'll do ending, because sometimes it does ending, and then we'll do dot replace, and we'll do end if it is there. Oops. and then we do remove double spaces. Okay, so that cleans it up. Okay, so it's pretty simple. First, I set a unique identifier, and so that ends up being here and under current ID. And I did this just so that if you run repeatedly or if you chain it to another thing, you know what the last one that you generated was. This was when I thought it was going to be part of a pipeline, because if you have multiple steps, you want to be able to pass information from one step to the other. And I just write it to file. You can kind of ignore that if you want. Okay, so, but where were we? Generate Synopsis. Yeah, so you save the current file and then first, I guess you generate the synopsis. All right, so here's the function to generate the synopsis. So you pick a random genre, tone, character, pace, storyline, style, setting, and time. So there's 8 different variables, and they get piped into this prompt. So think like a professional author. Brainstorm an extremely long, complete, detailed synopsis for a novel with the following appeal terms. It's a mouthful. So I give it a whole bunch of things. Oh, and I also put a UUID up at the top to just prime it with some entropy. So you multiply all these out. And I did have another video describing this, but this is a little bit more sophisticated. And also that video kind of stalled. Anyways, so brainstorm an extremely long and highly detailed complete plot synopsis with beginning, middle, and end. Include character and setting names. Vividly depict the entire novel. So this sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. The reason that it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't is because you, in order to get more creativity, you got to turn the temperature up. Text DaVinci 02 can be good at fiction. It can also be god awful. Sometimes it just generates a couple of generic boilerplate sentences, and sometimes it generates, the story about Marcus Fabius Aquila, right? Like that was a cool story. But this was the prompt that did that. So rather than fine tuning, which is really expensive and also frozen, it's rigid, and because then you might need to fine tune it again. Okay, so you generate this, blah, 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 you spit it out, fine. Here, let me just show you GPT-3 logs, date modified, one of the most recent one. That's the summarization, so that's not correct. Sorry, hang on. I was doing some different experiments with how to generate the fine-tuning data, but okay, so here's an example, perfect. Brainstorm an extremely long, and this prompt, you can tell that it's shorter than the current prompt. I added a little bit more detail to get it a little bit more on point, because if you tell it that it's a novel, one thing that I noticed is that sometimes it thought that it was brainstorming for a film, right? Which we can do that, but the whole point of AutoMuse is to generate novels. So I was like, let's get more specific. So genre, science fiction literature, setting Scandinavia, time period early medieval. So here's one problem with having a bunch of different appeal terms that you pick at random. Sometimes they don't jive. Sometimes they do, and it's hilarious. There was one where it was like a little boy, like a Scandinavian little boy in the 3rd century comes across a wrecked Viking ship, and it's actually a portal to a sci-fi world galaxy. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Let's roll with it. That is some serious mid-grade portal fantasy stuff. But, it fit it. It figured out a way to make it work. In year 946, Norway is in the midst of a fierce winter. A small village of R rowing, a single Viking longship breaks through the ice. So you still get some weird stuff like this. And so what you want to do is, if something is mostly good, you want to be able to rate it. And so what I figured out was, and this is interesting, I've had no less than I think 5 people now all comment either in Discord, Twitter, or on YouTube about doing generative adversarial networks. And as far as I know, it's all been independent. So something is happening out in the world where everyone is like, let's use GPT-3 to do GANs. And so I was like, okay, cool, let's do that. It's not a bad idea, and it's something I've had kicking around in my head. So then I came up with this idea. Because okay, you get oops, that's the summary one. So you get a synopsis, right? Here's a synopsis. So you get a synopsis, but then you generate a whole bunch of them, and some of them are garbage and some of them aren't. So what do you do with it then? What I did was I just said, grade the following synopses on a scale of 1 to 5, and I gave it a few shot example of grading them. And so then I gave it 3 different examples, Synopsis in the fair, like this is a short one. It's not a particularly good one. Grade 1. And then here's a much longer one where it gives you names, it gives you locations, it has a very, it's very vivid. Grade 5. And then I have a mid-length one, which is still complete, just not quite as much detail in grade 3. And so then you have it spit out another grade. This prompt works really well. And so the idea here is that when you want to generate a synopsis, so another thing you can do is I generated a whole bunch at random because my original idea was to fine tune it, which you're welcome to do that. I've got the fine tuning data here, but it costs like $30 to run this fine tune job. So that's why I don't recommend it, because just in terms of raw token count, if I spent that $30 generating synopses, I would have had like 10,000 different synopses that I could just filter based on criteria, rather than spending $30 to fine tune a single model, which I then still have to use at the old price. Right? So in terms of cost efficiency, I do not recommend using fine tuning right now. I recommend breaking it into multiple steps of ordinary prompts. Because remember, OpenAI lowered the price of ordinary GPT-3 by 66%, by 2/3. And fine tuning is still the original cost. So I do not recommend fine tuning right now. It is stupid expensive in comparison. So what you do is you can plug in whatever you want here. Genre, setting, time period. So let me just show you an example of what I mean by this. So we'll go to Playground. And please don't copy exactly what I'm about to show you, because this could be copyright infringement. But imagine that you want genre. This will be, let's see, middle grade, high fantasy. And then you say setting, I want it to take place at Hogwarts. Time period, this will be 1992. Story type. So story type, I have a list. So the story lines, I think. Oh yeah, action-packed, character-driven, intricately plotted, issue-oriented, non-linear. So we'll do a character-driven. So we'll do, let's see. So character-driven story with let's see. Let's say Hermione as the protagonist. And then pace. Whoops. We'll say leisurely paced, focusing on Hermione. I cannot spell. I promise. Focusing on Hermione and her studies. Character. So then the character was another set of things where you could just kind of choose. And since she's a familiar character, let's see, there's 30 different options. So we'll say that she's probably like spunky and quirky or whatever, and relatable. Okay, so protagonist is spunky, quirky, and relatable. She is very smart, but struggles socially. Tone. So the tone is fun. So you look at the tones that we have. Oh, and I pulled most of this from a story guide right here. My fiance, who's a librarian, sent this to me. So like, well, here I can just show you. Wait, why did that open? Don't open in that. Open here. There we go. So this is where I got a lot of these appeal terms. So this is basically like librarian training. And it tells you like what are all the ways that you can describe a book. And so GPT-3 knows all these terms. And so if you use appeal terms, this is what she did her thesis on. If you use appeal terms, like that phrase appeal terms, and then you use these appeal terms, GPT-3 understands that because it has read a lot about librarianship and book reviews and stuff. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. Okay, so tones. So tones. So here's some tones like steamy, strong sense of place, suspenseful. Some of y'all will want to generate steamy fan fiction and have at it. I'm just showing you the way. If you want to be sinful, do that on time. But the tone that I'm going to do is going to be I'm going to choose whimsical and let's see, whimsical and nostalgic. There we go. Nostalgic. This is fan fiction for revisiting someone's favorite character. And then finally, style. So style was writing style. So this is the writing style, which is like how do you want it to be written? And so we'll probably do. We don't want it to be gritty. Let's see. Hermione is very analytical, so it would probably be richly detailed. So we'll do like richly detailed and thoughtful. Okay. And actually, I probably should change this to writing style, because if you just say style, it might not be clear, like what, like yeah, that it's that. Okay, so writing style. What did I say? It was going to be witty. Yeah, so witty, thoughtful, and richly detailed. Richly detailed. It should. It is um, first POV from Hermione's perspective. Okay, so now this is something that like you could just put in randomly to get whatever story you want, and we'll turn this temperature up to 1 because that's the most you can do in the playground. We'll turn that up to 2,000 so that it can just write. And now let's see what it generates. So she's starting her first year. Let's see. As Hermione begins her studies, she quickly realizes she is a natural at magic. Oh, this is really long. That had a very long first act. Oh, so you might have noticed that I had to specify beginning, middle, and end. So here's the thing: is if you say synopsis, here's the thing: is the term synopsis is supposed to just kind of whet your palate for a story and not contain any spoilers. And so that's why I had to specify: give me a synopsis with beginning, middle, and end, so it summarizes the whole story. The Professor Severus Snape, the potions master. So this actually probably didn't work that well because it's just like summarizing Harry Potter because it knows it too well. But with Sirius Black safely in the present. Oh, this is interesting. So it's it's basically like kind of remaking different aspects of Harry Potter. She eventually goes on to marry Ron and have 2 children. Okay, so this is basically just kind of like proposing Harry Potter, but from Hermione's perspective. Excuse me. So, anyways, you get the idea where you fill in the blanks and you get a story that you want. This worked out pretty well actually. So you see how long and complete this is. Probably if I gave it a little bit more details about like change this about it, like if you want a fan fiction generator, but you see that this works just fine. And actually that's probably about it for how far in are we? We're a whole 20 minutes in. Okay, so you get the idea how the synopsis generator works. Let's move on to the plot generator. So the plot generator is once again, exactly what it says on the tin. So let me close these and we'll open plot generator material. So the plot generator takes a synopsis and then generates a plot outline for it. So let me show you. So there's that, and then so I just copied all those synopses that I generated, and then I generated a whole mess of plots from them. And so what I did was, and let me show you the prompt because that'll help it make the most sense. Prompt outline. Okay, so imagine a detailed plot outline for the following novel, and then you give it the synopsis here. And I say use the following beat sheet to outline the novel. And GPT-3 knows Save the Cat. So this is Save the Cat is let's see, describe Save the Cat writes a novel in great detail. This book is about No, it is not. What is the save the cat plot structure? There we go. Okay, so we say list all the plot beats for save the cat. And so you see it knows all of these plot beats. And so this is basically a formula that you can use to generate any plot. So the key insight that I had was rather than just having GPT-3 write like a pantser, which is just writing by the seat of its pants, if you give it structure and then explore each of those structures and kind of expand it over time. So you start with a really solid synopsis, and then from that synopsis, you generate a really good plot. And then from that plot, you generate a whole bunch of really good scenes. And then from those scenes, you generate scripts. And then from those scripts, you generate prose, right? So it's this chain of expansions. But the problem, and I got up to the level of scene generator, but that's where it fell apart. Even with summarization, it doesn't really understand what it's trying to do without a lot of fine tuning. And so it's going to be really expensive. But then you also run out of window size, because with fine tuning, you're limited to 2,000 tokens, which you'll run out of real fast. Anyways, that was a little bit of a tangent. So here's an example of a prompt outline. So detailed novel outline. Each beat should be a paragraph long. I probably actually ought to change this this prompt to make it a little bit better. Synopsis generator, prompt synopsis. Let's see, writing style, and then story tone. Fix those. Okay, and then. What did I say? Change the outline. Yeah, okay. So brainstorm an extremely long, high detailed plot synopsis. Yeah. And then I'll say, let's borrow the same language. So brainstorm a highly detailed plot outline for this novel. Each plot beat should be a paragraph long. And Instruct often doesn't know that, but I found that if you include this, it'll usually do at least like 2, maybe 3 sentences, whereas if you don't include that, it will only be like 1 sentence long. And so then what I did the same thing where I created a way of grading it. So like sometimes it'll just spit out like a few plot beats, and I'm like, no, this is garbage. Give me an actual plot, like full. And so then here's a much longer one, which is like, okay, this is something we can work with. So that's grade 5. And then if it has all the plot beats, but they're only 1 sentence long, then it's grade 3. And so what you can do is you can, given the same input, you can keep generating plot outlines with high temperature until you get one that's grade 5. And so then again, that's still going to be way cheaper than than fine tuning right now. Now, one thing that I did find in another experiment, and I probably can go ahead and open source this because it ultimately didn't work, so I guess I don't mind sharing it. So let me go ahead and set this, the plotter novel writer. So change visibility, make it public. So this one you can take a look at. It basically, it got pretty far, but it's still like it lost the plot all the time. But what I found was that if you switch to original DaVinci is way better at writing fiction, because the Instruct series was not trained to write fiction. So it's usually really garbage at it. But because original DaVinci is not fine-tuned, if you give it a chunk of prose, it'll just take that chunk of prose and run with it. And so if you explore these, I was working on an idea of like basic outlines and advanced outlines, and then I was kind of smushing it all together. And this is a hot mess. If you want to take the time to dig through it, I've unlocked the video where I was explaining this. Let's see, where is the one? I think it was here. Oh yeah. So if you look at this file, I'm not going to say it out loud, but look at this. This was the one that worked the best. And so you see the whole process of it trying to go through, and then it gets too long. But this story was really weird. It was really dark. but it actually like touched in on, like, I don't know, I was reading it as it was being generated. I'm like, okay, I'm really onto something here. But this was like 1 out of 10 worked a little bit. And then so remember I was saying like I kept running out of tokens. Like even with summarization, you cannot get a full length novel. You could probably do a novella, like up to maybe 20,000 words with a shorter plot structure. But GPT-3 cannot do full-length novels yet. I tried and tried and tried to get enough material in this. Maybe you could do a little bit better with fine-tuning, so that way you just give it a few data points and it can write. But yeah, so it's not going to work. Anyways, yeah, so those are the 3 things that I wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on. So AutoMuse is alive and well. I don't believe that this is going to disrupt the market. I don't think I'm going to lose any friends over it, because really all that I've got working is a synopsis generator and a plot outline generator, and that's pretty formulaic. Okay, I think that's it. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and consider supporting me on Patreon. Have a good one.